G'day there, Ozysturm here, country Victorian gamer of Star Wars Armada, Star Wars Legion, X-Wing, Dystopian Wars, Battletech, Flames of War, Team Yankee, and many other games. Please like, please subscribe, please leave a comment on this or any of my other videos, and please check out all my content. It really helps me to see that everyone enjoys what I'm doing and putting on this channel. Today I am doing a little bit of an overview of the painting that I have just completed of my Imperial Riot squad, and I hope that everyone enjoys it. The first part that we have to do is very similar to like what I have done previously with my Imperial Stormtroopers. Give them a nice undercoat of a grey and then start using the black to do some of the edges around the gaps in the uniform to get that undertone, and then start on the next colour. With the whites, I'm using a combination of gloss varnish and this dead white. I feel as though adding a little bit of the gloss gives it a bit more of a thinning out, as well as making it a little bit shiny for later on, and gives it that plastic type feel. I am also using currently a paint pot with some blue tack on it to really paint up the model, just like what I've done with the normal Stormtroopers, but seeing these models have a couple of them that are in a more of a kneeling position. I find it useful to use paint pot with blue tack, but I do need to hold it down. You will see later on down the track that I've actually purchased a Games Workshop model holder for the purpose, and that worked out quite well. But not so well for the likes of these models that are bending over. And as we can see, I've now finished the Stormtroopers. Let's move on to some new stuff. Now let's start on something new. The Riot shields are quite good. We are going to use the similar colours that we can see on the box. We're going to firstly start off with the top area using some of this black. I chose to use a Dark Templar black, as it was a little bit more glossy and oily and was able to get into the recesses or between the cracks a lot easier. I also found that the Abaddon black that I sometimes use is a little bit too thick for some of the more delicate work. Once I'm done painting this black section, I'm just going to put it aside to let it dry, and then move on to the likes of, with the Stormtroopers that are holding the Riot shield and the stun baton, there are a number of added bits to the uniform. We are firstly going to start with the back battery pack, which is on the back, and I'm going to use a little bit of this gunmetal to do that. You can also keep it the same white color, I guess. I just felt maybe doing it in a slightly different color meant that this is more specialist uniform item. We never really saw much of the reverse side of any of the Stormtroopers or even the Navy troopers that had these batons, etc. in, and or it was always very front and top viewing of the actual model itself. With the webbing itself, I've chosen to go with a scrag brown as the primary colour underneath it, and then I'm going to put a little bit of, on the cord itself, I'm going to use the likes of a Memphis Red for the actual wire itself. At this point, it doesn't matter if the actual brown goes a little bit on the Stormtrooper armor. Because it's such a light color, I can go back and easily clean it up with a couple of brush strokes of the white that I've already got. It's more of a case of making sure that you do it in a clean manner. You'll also notice with the model that I've left the arm off of it. That's primarily because so that I can get into those spaces. It's very important to do as much of the model as possible while it's accessible. You'll find that if you fully assemble quite a lot of models, there will be gaps where you just physically can't get a brush in. So by trying it out, testing it, doing a rough copy first, you can work out exactly what you can do, what you can't do. With some of the buckles, I've done it also in that metal, as well as the control panel in the front for that webbing, just to so this is not standard uniform for a Stormtrooper. When it comes time to do the other arm that has the stun baton, obviously the arm section itself will be the same coloration as the Stormtrooper, but for the baton itself, I decided to go with a gunmetal look. The coloration that we saw the stun batons in within Star Wars Andor was more of a jet black, so you could go down the pathway of doing a black. Or alternatively, like myself, you could use a metal. Would be both quite appropriately. The main thing to do when you do paint with the baton is just be careful not to get too much of your primary baton color onto those, I guess you could call it electric elements, which I'm using this blue for. It is a nice light blue, and I do find it useful for many applications, including iron engines in my Star Wars Armada models and elsewhere. I'm actually going to be looking to do some House Steiner Battletech models with this color eventually as well, once my Kickstarter has arrived. But either way, just gently dabbing on this blue around it just gives it a little bit of look that it's live, or even it gives the impression of the likes of lightning that we saw with Return of the Jedi with Emperor Palpatine, or even with Count Dooku in Attack of the Clones. At this point, obviously I've done a lot of the model. I need to now go back and clean up some of the spots with that white or the gloss varnish. I also need to do the wiring in red, as well as just work out exactly the pathway of the wire along the arm itself. Now, this can be a little bit difficult if you've gone and cleaned up your Stormtrooper uniform back to the bare bones, thinking that it might be a bit of warping. It actually isn't. It's actually designed to actually have a wire running all the way from that battery pack all the way up the arm, back of the webbing, down the arm to the model, the baton itself. This is the first right trooper equipped with the baton completed. The shield's now white, and we're ready to start on the next unique model in the set. This here is the KX droid. As you can see, it's already been undercoated with a normal Abaddon black or Chaos black, depending on which set you've got. I've spray painted these in the black, which was quite handy. I've also used a bit of the dead white to do the eyes, and then a very small smidgen of yellow in it in the center. You can just leave it white on the other hand, and it works perfectly fine. Or if you wanted to be a little bit more different, you can use like a blue or a red to add a bit more different color. In the pictures that we have seen of the KX droid in Rogue War 1, his body is not completely black. Instead, he's got sections on the body that are bare metal rather than this black color. So I am going to put a bit of gunmetal on the likes of the ankles and the pivot points on his arms, legs, hips. Also going to put a little bit of the gunmetal on the likes of the chin area where his vocalizer is. And also like a very tiny amount of metal on some of his control panels in the front and rear. What we don't want to do is overpower the model by having this gunmetal. We want the more predominant color to be the black. You'll also note that within the movie, around the shoulder blade, there is like a strip of metal that is on the outside of the likes of the Imperial logo on KX-PO. So with a very gentle brush, what I've done is just made a bit of a line. I've also painted the inside of the shoulder connection point with the metal. And then I'm going to use a secondary color to actually accent some of the other metal banding. Again, this takes a lot of effort to try and get to, but in the end, it actually is well and truly worth it. The metal that I used is this Hashut copper. It's quite nice and vibrant rather than some of the darker coppers that you can get, or the brass. Just by putting it onto some of those raised sections within the shoulder blade will make it look as though the droid has got a number of different paneling on it. You do need to work very finely, so having those fine brushes in some ways, I wouldn't recommend it with a spray or even with a wash, because you could very easily move that around too far and get it into places which you don't want it. So using a very fine brush, something like a 5.0 or even higher could be rather useful. Beyond that, then I've only got a little bit of extra detailing to do. As you can see, I'm going back over the eyes with a little bit of this blue, just to help it to be really seen. And then what I want to do is to take a look at maybe giving it a bit of a gloss. Now, we want that gloss on primarily most of it. And what I've found is by using Abaddon Black as an undercoat and then this Black Templar wash over the top of it, thinning it down ever so slightly, it does give a nice gloss to it. You can use like Null Oil on some of it, but I feel as though Null Oil will just run a little bit more and not give you a nice clean difference between the shoulders. Lastly, of course, we need to do the gun, which I will use my Warplock Bronze, like I have with all my other Stormtroopers and Rebel Trooper blasters, to give the actual gun that slick, oily look. We do want to paint the actual gun slightly different so that the actual armor and also the weapon is two distinct shades of color. To that end, we still have the matter of the actual droid being very, very matte color. We've put the black on, we've then done the Black Templar over the top of it, which has given it a little bit of a sheen to it to blend it all, some shading, but now we want it to look more slick, just like what we've done with the actual likes of the Stormtrooper armor. So in this way, I'm adding a bit of the gloss varnish over all of that black area. You can be quite liberal with it, simply because it doesn't too much matter where it goes. With both the Riot Troopers and also the KX droid, we're pretty much completed all of our squad. So as you can see, I have painted them all up. I have painted the bases in like a brown color, as well as used a bit of yellow around the edges. Obviously, I'm going to need to add in some grass or some sand on the bottom of those bases once they're all fully done. The marksman is nice with a brownish shoulder band to denote that he's a sergeant. These are just the two together. There you go. Now, my next set of projects that I'm working on at the moment, and if you take a look over my shoulder, you will see that I have recently gotten a 3D printer. And although I am going to use that 3D printer to print up some of my miniatures, bits and pieces, I'm also going to be using it to put up some templates for some of the ships that I've already got, as well as some of the ships that I have currently on order from overseas that will be coming my way. I'm also a part of the Star Wars Legacy Discord channel and looking at what they are doing and hopefully get some of their content onto this channel at some point in time. Less so the actual tabletop simulator stuff, but more so the actual miniatures itself, because my interest is more towards that. But in the meantime, my next project is going to be this: a Battletech map scale Union class dropship. So stay tuned for that. But from Ozysturm, I'll see you on the table next time. Bye for now.